going to tell you about it right now so you can figure out if you want to stay all the way through. We'll probably go, I don't know, an hour and a half today, something like that. So that's kind of what we're doing. Picking a bunch of cool stories, fun stories, depending on, what your taste is. We're going to talk about King County Regional Homeless Authority. They're proposing to spend $25 billion over the next 5 years to end homelessness forever. Forever. It's going to be done. They're going to build 23,000 units of housing. That's what the proposal is, right? That's what we've got going on here. Going to spend like $8 billion something to start, to get the program started. $8 billion, $25 billion over 5 years. And the main thing there for me, well, we'll get into that. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at a community down in Portland, Woodstock area. It's got a commercial area, and they are basically going to be hiring private security because things have gotten so unsafe. They've had so many break-ins, and the police, short-funded, defunded the police in Portland, don't have the ability to provide basic public safety. So citizens are banding together, businesses are banding together in a community in Portland. They're going to create their own policing on top of policing. I'm sure this will work out just fine. But that's where they're at. Also got a story. Walmart is going to be delivering, has already started the process of, if you're within a mile radius of a store, you want to pay $3.99 to get a rush order on your goods, whatever it is that you have to have that you can't drive your lazy butt down to the store and get from Walmart, you're going to have the option to have it driven, or not driven, but flown to you, George Jetson style, in a drone. Drop it off. Just drop it off in your porch. Now, some people, the story there is some people, and a lot of people, and I think our community are going to say, well, there's a little bit of an invasion of privacy. Walmart guarantees us, no, we're not going to take any pictures of your, wife doing whatever on the back deck, sunbathing. We're not doing that. We don't have cameras. We're not recording. Yeah, well, okay. But you're still going to have a flying thing come down, basically a small, tiny little plane, drop off your goods, and whoop, 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 whoop. We'll go back up and, is that an invasion of privacy? That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Boeing today is delivering the last 747. You might say, who cares? Don't care. Well, for a lot of us that grew up with the 747, that basically changed the way that air travel and delivery of goods happened because it was a 4-jet and it was a monster. It was 2-story. I'm going to talk about that. It's a big deal. Boeing 747. The last one is rolling off the assembly line today. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll talk about some of my experiences on one of the early 747s flying to Australia because it opened up a bunch of air travel. And then we had, airline industry got deregulated. Okay, so the very last thing I'm going to cover today is the Polly P video. And you know what that is. I would have covered this on Friday, but I got super sick and I was sick throughout the weekend and I'm kind of recovering now. My voice is back up to where I think I need it to be. But if I go sideways during this live stream, you know why. If you hear me just croaking, you can hear, what's wrong with the audio? Well, that's just Sean's voice. Let's start with the King County Regional Homeless Authority proposes $11.5 billion plan to end homelessness in King County. So this is a proposal, and we're focusing on the wrong things here. As I read through more and more of this stuff, you've got a massive addiction issue. And everybody's thinking, well, if we just had more housing, what, you're going to stick all those addicts in there and hope it goes well? You're going to just create a bunch of, needle type environments where just, the homeless who are wildly addicted to fentanyl or whatever are going to go and things are going to be happily ever after. It's going to be no issues. We've got one guy from the King County council, Reagan Dunn, who basically says something else, and we'll talk about that. Let's read this article. King County Regional Homeless Authority released a draft plan that calls for $25.5 billion over 5 years to end homelessness in King County. All right, they're going to build 23,000 units of housing. They build 23,000 units of housing based on what is going on today. How many of the folks that are in our homeless encampments right now will go into that housing? Super small percentage, because there's going to need to be rules. And if there's not rules, to go into said 23,000 units of housing, then this is going to be even more of a cluster, because then you've just created some massive ghettos that are just going to be wildly out of control. Like some of the tiny villages that you see now. You're seeing people get murdered. Yep. Kind of covering some of that stuff up. Well, don't talk about that. It doesn't look good. That's not good. You've got a dude in a tent last week here in Seattle that was on fire and trying to get him out. Oh, this guy's shot, something along those lines. You've got just some crazy stories going on because the majority of these folks are on drugs. So to me, no matter how much you spend, unless you are looking at the addiction end of things, involuntarily putting people into treatment is housing. Unless you look at that, unless that is your first and foremost look at what we're doing here, homelessness wise, this isn't going to work. Second thing, you've got mentally ill just running all over. Third thing, mentally ill, addicted to drugs. The double whammy, the combo effect. King size me, go through McDonald's. I would like to king size that. It just makes that problem just that much worse. Because, is this person whacked out of their mind because of drugs, or are they just mentally ill? And we dumped everybody out of our mental institutions, closed those down. So to me, this money should be spent on addiction services and services for the mentally ill. That's where this money should be spent. And then start working on providing housing for people because, again, treatment is housing. Get those people housed. Well, are they under a roof like we're always talking about? Yes, they are. They're getting treatment. That's what they need. They don't need just this carte blanche. All right, here's 23,000 units of housing. Hope this works. That's just not, it's not going to work. It's a plan doomed to fail. Some of you are going to say, well, that is the plan. Kind of seems that way, right? Kind of seems that way. Talk about folks and how much money they make that are the CEOs of these companies that are running these nonprofits. Like 200 grand, 400 grand, 450 grand a year in salary, and things are just getting worse. How does that work? Because in the private sector, when things go sideways, people get fired. People lose their jobs all day long. But, in the nonprofit world, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. Here's $25.5 billion. Hope this works. They're asking for feedback on the draft, which the public can provide by going to this link, which I did. Initially, $8 billion would be used for capital costs. $8 billion. How many substance abuse centers can you create for that? Probably a handful, right? I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are, but $8 billion to start up and $3.5 billion would be necessary each year. So you got 11.5 kind of upfront, and then you've got the rest of the 25.5 is $3.5 billion per year. And this is going to end homelessness. All right. If you build those 23,000 units, you're only going to have a fraction of people take advantage of them. If you have any kind of, all right, you need to get sober to get in here. You can't be doing all these shenanigans. You can't do all this stuff. You can't run around after people with swords. You can't run around after people with hatchets like Jonathan Cho had last week. Check out Jonathan's Twitter if you want to see him get chased down by a dude with a hatchet. Jonathan Cho called it an axe, but axes have longer handles. Hatchets have shorter handles. And there's a guy chasing him down. Poll after poll shows that homelessness is a top issue in the state of Washington. Governor Inslee is devoting $4 billion of his proposed budget to affordable housing. And what these folks nobody is touching on, well, virtually nobody except a few in the conservative world, are, hey, this is a drug issue. This is an addiction issue. Go to any homeless camp, walk around, be there at night, see what that looks like at night. Very active, and not in a good way. These are not people that are just down on their luck and couldn't make their rent. These are people living a lifestyle. That's what you've got going on. And then on top of that, you've got criminal activity running the drug trades that nobody wants to talk about. You've got gang activity running the drugs. So, all of this combines to kind of one part and parcel. And yet what we're trying to do is blame it on, well, there's not enough affordable housing. That's not the issue. That's not the issue, because even if you build all this, you get a certain percentage of people in, you've got all this housing and people don't want to live there because they want to do their own thing, which is what's going on. And that is what the communities are worked up about, is that you've got endless break-ins. You got people walking around, you've got that are just wildly addicted to drugs that are just, literally doubled over is what we talk about a lot. You watch the Kensington Avenue videos and you literally see people doubled over at the waist because the drugs they're on are so strong that this is the state that it leaves them in. Rather vulnerable, right? So you fill those, build those 23,000 units of housing. If you build 23,000 units of housing here in King County and you fill them all up, that just creates a massive vacuum, which is what we've done here on the West Coast. We've created a massive vacuum for people from all over the United States to come to, because why wouldn't they come here? Because if they're addicted and they're in the lifestyle, doing a little fentanyl, shooting some heroin, whatever it is, this is the place to do it. You've created a place to come and do it, whether it's LA, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle. I mean, those are some of your hot spots in the West Coast. There's tons of other cities that are involved in that too. But, statewide, this is not a unique thing. This is not a unique thing. In the big cities, this is where this is happening. And it's because you've decriminalized, possession of drugs. You've decriminalized a lot of criminal activity. You've defunded the police. Don't have enough cops to go around. You've taken a crap on policing in general. These are not new concepts here. It's just kind of like, well, look what's going on. And everybody's saying, yeah, affordable housing, don't have enough. It's not, we need more housing. No, you need more treatment, and you need to start working on the people that are in these encampments. And if you work through all the folks that have an addiction issue, if you work through all the folks that are mentally shouldn't be out there, I think you'd be wildly surprised at who's left over. Small, tiny fraction of that. And you don't have to spend $5 billion. You just don't. You're going to spend money on addiction and treatment services. You're going to spend money on, mental hospitals, whatever it is, whatever capacity you need to help these folks out. Because a lot of these folks should not be out in public on their own. They just shouldn't. We've done podcast after podcast after podcast of actual folks who have been arrested dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and they can't get involuntarily put into, a treatment center like their family wants. They just can't do it. Those folks are, they're mentally not able to make that decision. And so we've got this system where, just not happening. Fundamentally, this homelessness issue has occurred because we have not built the housing, the roofs people need to live under, Governor Inslee said at a press conference. That is where I argue 100% that is not the issue. That is not the issue. People come to Washington, people come to King County to live the lifestyle. And the way you know that is you go out to these encampments and take a look around, see how people are living, see what's in the garbage, because the garbage is strewn all over. See the needles that are strewn all over. Look at the record number of 911 calls to the homeless encampments for medical issues. Look at the number of shootings that you've got in the homeless encampments. Look at the number of fires that the fire department is responding to in these homeless encampments. Yeah, you look at those stats and you go, oh, yeah, okay. We've got shenanigans going on all day long. And the citizens are fed up, but they don't know what to do. And you know what? Citizens voted in a lot of this policy. So you get what you pay for. You're living the dream of progressive policy. How is that working out? Well, let's spend $25.5 billion and build some housing. That's literally what my county is up to. Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell plans to spend $250 million each year for his 2023 budget. Lack of access to housing is the source to homelessness, and gaining access to housing is the solution, Mayor Harrell said in a recent press conference. Well, that's kind of the political speak that you have to have at this point in time. Because if you go down the hardline road of, well, here's your housing, but you got to be sober. Here's your housing, but you got to be in a treatment plan. Or, hey, treatment is housing. You're getting a roof over your head, but you got to go through detox. You got to go through, you got to go through a 90-day program. You got to go through whatever. Now, you might say, well, that stuff doesn't work. Well, at least you're giving it a shot that way is kind of my thought. And the folks that need to be there involuntarily, they need to be there involuntarily. Involuntarily, you going to put them in jail? Yeah, not in a state like Washington, you're not. In California, that's one of the things we're going to talk about here in a second, is California is going down that road because things have already gotten worse. And whatever happens in California, years later, happens up here in King County. It migrates. It's always the same. The lack of affordable housing has happened down in California years ago. When I was in my 20s, in the 80s, and people were migrating en masse from California up to here because things were cheap. Well, now guess what? Things aren't so cheap up here. It happened. The California push, it's here. So King County Regional Housing Authority's plan lays out how much it arrived at a price point much larger than what the governor or mayor has proposed. Interesting, right? $25.5 billion. How much of that is salaries? Yeah. Yeah. Because it always seems like there's these massive salaries and the situation just gets worse. How's that work? It doesn't, and it's not working. And yet billions and billions of dollars are being spent. However, one King County elected official was quick to push back. All right, I always like to hear that side. It's too much. It's too big, King County Council Member Reagan Dunn said. He thinks King County Regional Housing Authority should go for a lower price point. Maybe $500 million. Maybe $500 million annually would be a fair amount if the strategies were working. Totally. Put it on a test basis. All right, let's spend XYZ tiny percentage of amount. Let's do a test program. Let's do a pilot program on the scale that we're talking about here. We're already doing that. We've already got tiny communities all over. You've got these little test programs, but invariably they don't work because not enough people want to go into them because they're expected to live by a set of rules. And yeah, that's not happening. Not happening. How many times have I talked about when you clear out an encampment, such a small, tiny percentage of the folks, want to take advantage of going in to, housing where they get, treatment services or whatever. A handful. I always throw out out of an encampment, 65, maybe 3 or 4 people. And that's if they show up for housing for one night. That is an acceptance of housing. So you got this wild disparities, wild disparities between what people are throwing out there and what will actually work. Councilmember Dunn says his reservation about the plan goes beyond the price. He wants to make sure whatever plan moves forward addresses the root causes of the problem. Get to the root causes. Housing is an important part of the overall solution, but that's only part of it. We've got to double down on things like substance abuse and addiction treatment. And I would throw in there, along those same lines, care for the mentally ill who are also addicted, or they're just out there doing their own thing. And they've been arrested so many times. And yet, because we have this idea that, letting people commit crimes against the rest of the community is somehow compassionate without ever actually putting them in jail, somehow we think that's a thing. And so we just keep, we've got the hamster wheel of these people just doing their own thing, and the community suffers. One of my releases this morning at 9:00 was a custom wedding dress store in Seattle got rocked. I think it was last Thursday for about $100,000 worth of dresses and computer stuff. They bored out the lock, drilled out the lock, and they left a hammer, and basically took them down for about a year of revenue. That one thing. So you've got this going on all day long. You got this criminal activity going on all day long because we've created a situation where police don't have enough police to cover the city in general. You know the story. I mean, I don't need to tell you. It's just continuation of the same. Wedding store. You had a dozen dresses taken. Imagine being one of those brides. We got some bad news on your wedding dress. Oh, what happened? Did you rip a seam? Is there a stain that you found? Nah, it got jacked. They stole it. It's gone. Oh, I'm so far beyond getting married or having been married, because I was married, I think, when I was 23 or 24. Don't really remember. So far ago, so long ago. But I seem to remember the wedding dress being a big deal. And my wife had a great dress. It was a cool dress. It was cool. There was a lot of effort put into that. But I can't imagine maybe being a couple of months out. What happened to your dress? Well, it got stolen in a break-in. A wedding dress. A wedding dress. That's how far craziness has gotten. King 5 did not reach out to, but yeah, so the housing an important part of the overall solution, but it's only part of it. And that's why I say start with cleaning out the encampments of people who are wildly addicted to drugs. Start there. But nobody's going to do that because, yeah, you want to go into treatment? You want to get sober? No. All right, well, you can't live here. You can't keep living here in the park. Can't keep living here on the public street. All right. And if they don't do that, put them in jail. But we're not doing that, right? We're just kind of like, all right, move along, got to move along. So they move along and whack-a-mole. They come back, days later when it's cleared out and everybody's gone. Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing is just this, it's the hamster cycle of just hamster wheel of housing. Now, I did look at this, and this is some boring stuff. King County Regional Homeless Authority 5-year plan. We've got dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness. It's all based on housing. Very little of it has to do with behavioral changes. Don't change the people because, people are fine. And that's where this, veers wildly off the rails, in my opinion. Because if you want to see what's going on, go down to a homeless encampment, hang out there for half a day. You tell me the shenanigans you see. You tell me what's going on. Hang out there at night. You tell me what's going on. Are they sitting around doing kumbaya? Not so much. Not so much, right? So you've got, I'm just going to read a few of these titles. We're not even going to get into it because it's not worth my time. Scale partnership for zero to achieve functional zero countywide. Restructure the service system to improve capacity, supports, and efficiency. All right. Yeah. Scale diversion to decrease inflow. Somebody with some kind of advanced degree created this, and they haven't been to an encampment to see what's going on, I don't think. Standardize and support person-centered healing-based practices. This was the only section where it started to talk a little bit. Was it that section? Improve severe weather response system performance. All right. I just watched a video of in Santa Monica of all the homeless dealing with that torrential downpour. It looked terrible. That's a terrible situation to be in outside, whether you're on drugs or not. You know what I mean? But these people they choose to live this lifestyle. And that's a lot of my thought is these are people who aren't really looking for housing. They're looking at this as a lifestyle and they want to keep it going because detoxing out of it, super painful. They don't want to go down that road. We've got optimize and secure funding opportunities to support services and operations. And you get the idea. Grow and diversify portfolio of service providers. All right, that sounds like more hands out for money. Ensure the availability of accessible, accountable, and responsive services. Okay. Some of that in there is we're talking about what we need to get people better. Develop I'm just not even going to read the rest because it goes down a bunch of stuff. And I think up front, if you deal with, all right, which drug are you on? All right, we need to get you into detox. Don't want to go into detox? Got to move you out. And, a lot of folks are not going to be able to voluntarily do that. You're going to have to involuntarily do that. And we're not there. So all the housing in the world, it's just not going to work. That's my thought. I mean, that's just where we're at. Okay. So that's that. Down in California, civil rights groups to Governor Newsom, court-mandated mental health treatment is unconstitutional. So he's got this CARE Act, which stands for, sorry for the long, Community Assistance, CA, Recovery and Empowerment Court, or CARE Court, for those diagnosed with schizophrenia or other psychotic orders. Okay, so they're looking at a way to have, a court system that basically says you should not be out in public. We need to take you off the streets. We need to get you some help. The problem with this is, and the problem here in Washington is even if you have that system, you don't have the mental facilities to go to put these people into. And we know that because we've got so many people that have been arrested on criminal activity that are waiting to get in to here. It's Western States Hospital. You know, we're looking for those beds, and those beds aren't there because we emptied them all out, and we're not spending money on there. So spend your money on your drug treatment, mental facilities, because we got a lot of crazy people running around in these encampments, and the drugs that they're taking doesn't help. So Governor Newsom is getting some real pushback down in California because he's finally at a point that he's having to do something. You know, it's got the noise has gotten so loud about the housing and the homelessness that, you know, he's going down these roads. The organizations argue, these are the organizations that are saying, this isn't good, we can't have this. They argue that the program robs unhoused Californians of their autonomy to choose their own mental health treatment and threatens those with disabilities of their fundamental rights, all while failing to guarantee they will get permanent housing and coordinated community care. Treatment is housing. There you go. All right. We solved it. Fixed. Problem solved. But people aren't voluntarily going into treatment, whether it's for mental health care or for addiction. They're not doing that. It's just not happening. So we're just going to, you know, let people run around forever? I think that's kind of where we're at. I think that's what will happen. We'll build some housing. Let's talk reality here. We'll build some housing, but, you know, it's going to be like it is now, which is we don't necessarily have enough to cover all the people that are out there homeless. But those folks, for the large percentage, they will take a hotel if there's no strings attached. But if there are any kinds of strings attached, they won't do it because we've got a lot of that housing out there already, but they don't want it because they claim it's unsafe, which we know that the homeless encampments are already unsafe, you know, and they, you know, no booze, no drugs, no crazy behavior, no machetes, no swords. You can't have those in there. And people are like, nah, I need to keep my sword. I need to keep my sword. And by sword, I mean whatever stuff that they've got going on, right? All right. Okay, so that's kind of where we sit with that one. It'll be interesting to see what the public's feedback is to this $25.5 billion proposal. But I think a lot of folks are going to say, this is going the wrong way. And they should. Folks should say, this is going the wrong way. And now you want to tax us to provide this $25.5 billion. And yet within my community, I am seeing tent after tent after tent. And you know, all the shenanigans that go along with that. We're going to deal with that on top of being taxed to pay all this stuff because they're going to have to come up with this money from somewhere. Some of the money is going to come from, you know, various sources of funding. And to me, it's like you can build all the housing in the world you want. But at the end of the day, like Reagan Dunn said, if you don't have the root causes, if you're not working on those root causes, thing's never going to go away. And you're going to continually have people all across the United States who want to live this lifestyle come to these West Coast cities because why wouldn't they? Ask yourself that. Why wouldn't they do this? We've already set up. We've just, you know, we've given them a chip shot, talking golf terms here. We've given them a 10-foot chip shot and we've given them 10 mulligans. All right, let's keep going. Do better. You'll be good. All two, you know, thumbs up. Here's your clean needles. Here's your tent. Here's your food. Here's your housing vouchers for whatever. All right. I'm going to look at your guys' comments, see what you guys got going on here, and see what we've got going on. I am now able to look at those of you who are watching on Rumble and make some comments here. Pure fraud from somebody on Rumble. It does seem like that, doesn't it? $25.5 billion, and we're already spending hundreds of millions already. I just said that twice. It made no sense, but you know what I mean. Still just a tiny bit foggy, but we're already spending all this money and you're like, well, this isn't getting better. It's getting worse. So what are we doing? Yeah, got some big salaries in there. We need to keep this machine going. Yeah, let's not close things down because we'd have a real issue on our hands. I don't think we'd have much of an issue if all the housing stuff out there stopped right now. How bad would it be? It'd be a little bit worse. It's already bad. Let's see what everybody else is talking about. Tough love and reality saved my life, not housing first. Okay. You know what? Rebecca, 100% agreed. And I think that's hard though, because a lot of folks just aren't there yet. And I was watching, what was I watching? Something, probably a soft white underbelly, because that guy's got all the good stuff. And somebody was saying, hey, yeah, with the amount of amenities that we're given in Skid Row, we're not bottoming out. We're not bottoming out. You've got this safety net of kind of just some very basic stuff. So you don't bottom out and you just keep doing the craziness. And so tough love and reality. But that we don't want to deal with reality. Reality is too expensive because then you got to really work on people, and people are hard to work on. Housing, I can talk about housing all day. Oh, I need 23,000 units of housing, 25.5 billion. It's just a matter of money. But in order to get those folks the care that they need, the help that they need, you're gonna have to do some crazy stuff. Jeff Grill, thank you. Remember to hit the like button. Yeah. Hey, we've got a ton of people that are on the Discord channel now. It's free. Got a reasonable plus. I know it's got the plus in there, which you always think, you got to charge something. But if you want to put a storyline on, and we've also got a video on the YouTube channel, how to join Discord, how to post a storyline, check that out. And I'm on Discord every day because that's where all of my storylines come from. And if you post a storyline and I like it, I might read it. I already have read a handful from folks, and that's just kind of what we're doing. So root causes, drug addiction or alcohol addiction over 90% of the time. 100% agreed. 100% agreed. I talk with folks that, work with the homeless, that are out there daily. And I always ask, well, what percentage do you think are addicted? And they always want to give like a conservative number. They're like 80%. I'm like, really? You think there's 20% that aren't? Because in all the videos that I watch and the folks that I've talked to, it's always 100% of everybody in here is on drugs. That's why they're living here. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stand living here if you're sober. That's one of those things, right? If you're sober, you would not be living there. And that's where I think there are some of those, tiny little encampments where they're pretty clean. Okay, those are the exception. The vast majority of what we're seeing are drug-related and drug-driven. And also, the vast majority of homicides via shooting that we're seeing right now in the United States are gang-driven due to drug violence. So it all kind of works together, doesn't it? Yeah, it all works together. Personally, I would rather see our veterans and the families in need of housing taken care of first. The veteran community, the number of veterans that are homeless, it's like we just abandoned veterans. Yeah, veterans have already served. That's why they're veterans. Get them the care that they need, the help that they need. But anybody who's ever dealt with the VA hospital, yeah, it's crazy how that's going, right? I mean, it's not going. And to get some help as a vet, brutal. And so many of the folks that are of my dad's generation came back from like Vietnam and are just, tough go. Either, some of them had injured, but a bunch of them have just trauma, and all the folks that are out there with just trauma. And, a lot of folks, a lot of what soft white underbelly deals with is the trauma, the underlying trauma that gets people to that point where they start doing drugs and going down that road. And, trying to unravel that, I mean, even if somebody wants to get sober, sometimes that is just a massive, mountain to climb and overcome. But throwing them in some housing that we spent 25.5 big ones on, that's not gonna solve much. It's a tiny percentage of folks are probably going to take that housing and run with it, but they probably would have figured how to work that anyway. They're at that point where they're ready to make that decision and get on the fast track to, all right, I need to get my life back in order. This just isn't working out. But these drugs that we've got now are so addictive that I think so many people are just taken down and they don't know what to do. Yeah, they literally invited this problem. We have literally invited this problem into our communities by soft on crime stance. We've tolerated drugs. One of the things that I always think about is, all right, we legalized weed. Maybe we should have kept weed illegal. And people want to say, it doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't hurt anything. Well, okay. And then it's a gateway drug. All right. Yeah, maybe. But, tax it, get that tax revenue. And it's a business model, right? It's a business model. But you're probably not going to, legalize fentanyl because you've got too many people dying. Let's talk about that for a second. You got more people dying of fentanyl overdoses right now than you do of COVID. Yeah, that's happening. So, and the whole thing with weed, you can smoke a lot of weed and you're not going to overdose. It just doesn't happen. It's not, medically, that's not a thing. You might say, well, if somebody smokes too much of the hard stuff, the vape or whatever it is, it can, whatever. But traditionally, you don't see a lot of 911 calls from somebody overdosing on weed. They just go to sleep. This other stuff, it's literally killing people left and right. See what else you got. Yeah, we've got Initiative 502 is backed by cartels. Cartels got a lot to lose if we go down roads of trying to tighten things up. We're just kind of not there. We've decriminalized everything. We've made it perfect situation for people to have these lifestyles. And then we sit back and go, how did this happen? What happened here? It's not shocking to me at all. We've watched it unravel here in Seattle, and it's just getting worse. So housing? No, housing ain't going to do it. That's kind of bottom line. Okay, let's move on to Woodstock business owners turning to security after break-ins and vandalism. This is a community in Portland. It's a community that is, they're like, okay, what do we do? What can we do? And in the wedding store owner that I covered this morning, where they got robbed, somebody was making the comment, well, she should just hire security. If you've got like $100,000 worth of revenue a year, and that's what it kind of sounded, whether that was profit or gross revenue, I don't know if it's gross revenue. I don't know how she's covering rent. But most small businesses do not have the budget for security to fight the craziness that's going on in these cities right now. Businesses are fed up with crime and vandalism in Woodstock and taking matters into their own hands. They say they're considering hiring private security and are in the process of talking to a company. The vandalism, drug use, and violence in the area has been terrifying for a lot of people, said Christy Landers, the local business owner. Landers has had Transformation Salon in Woodstock for 22 years. You read so many stories of these people who've had these businesses for years and years and years and years. And so many of you say, well, just move. All right, that's not a bad plan. But if you've got a business that's been, the roots of it are set and it has grown in that location, then so much of your business depends on that. You can't necessarily pick it up and move. It's not a store based on internet traffic. It's based on foot traffic or people driving to it from their community. And when you cut off those business relationships, you basically cut that store off at the knees. So, it's one thing to say, well, just hire security. You may not have the budget to do that. So what do? You basically crowdsource your security, right? There's been a lot of changes, a lot of houseless people who have moved into the neighborhood. They've been the scariest part for our kids, said Landers. She's spearheading the effort to get private security for the neighborhood. I was reading a story, getting prepared for this podcast, and a woman who had just moved up from California, she had a spare mattress. So she moved up from Cali into Portland. She had a spare mattress. You might have seen this story. Well, she had somebody from a homeless encampment come, grab the mattress to take to their, to their encampment because she was trying to help people out. And she had a set of keys to her brand new car, hanging on the door handle. That's just, the exterior door handle of her garage. Next morning, her brother was like, hey, I think he said, hey, sis, your car's gone. Well, they'd gotten into her garage. They knew where the keys were, and they stolen her car from her garage, from her driveway or garage. She was under the impression these are people that they just need a little bit of help. Well, they do, and it's in treatment. So treatment is housing. So when I see folks that I think, this person needs help, but it's not the buck that they're asking me for, right? Because fentanyl's cheap now. You can get a hit of whatever for really cheap. It's come way down in price. It doesn't take much. We used to talk about getting a bottle of Thunderbird wine, the vitamin fortified wine. So they wouldn't die, because of lack of vitamins. They'd die from alcoholism. And that's what it used to be back in the day, right? Can I get a quarter? I got to get something to eat. Get that. You can't make people decide it for themselves. There is something to that whole free will thing. People got to decide. But if they're breaking the law, then you got to put them in jail, no matter what. And that's where we have fallen short. Because so many of these stories, homeless person with 75 arrests and 22 convictions, still running around, just running around. There's no accountability. And no wonder we've just got this kind of stuff going on rinse, repeat. Just keep going. All right, it'll work itself out. Well, it's not. And that's why we're talking about it here. A community group that has gotten to the point where they're like, all right, well, I guess we got to defend ourselves. And you might say, and one of the comments that the woman made who gave the bed mattress, because she thought she was trying to do a good deed, is the police need to do more about trying to find my car. You're like, hey, you just moved to Portland. Are you new here? Oh, you are. All right, so we'll give you a break. Yeah. Stolen cars, you got 11,000 stolen cars a year in Portland. 11,000. The police are a little busy, covering their priority calls. And there's not enough of them. So, and they're scalping cops from one division to another based on what the hot topic is of the moment. And they're paying those folks overtime to cover whatever it is the hot topic. All right, we need an emphasis patrol over here. The bottom line is you just don't have enough cops. And you've got criminal activity that is really ramped up. And you don't have enough bandwidth, let alone the bandwidth to cover stolen cars. So that's just not happening. So this woman is spearheading the effort to get private security for the neighborhood. Landers told Coin 6 that their hope is to have guards patrol the neighborhood in the evening, shared between businesses. She said she got the idea after someone broke into her salon in October, and in that same month, a client told Landers she was attacked while walking down the street. Now, this community here has never been, let's call it, the safest, and I'm being kind. It's always been, it hasn't been a rough neighborhood, but it's always been a little bit sketchy. And I have that on word from folks who would know down in Portland. So I'm basing it on that. People who have literally walked those streets, maybe with a badge, who knows? It's unknown, right? Everything's anonymous here. So you've got somebody who's like, all right, we're hiring our own guard service. And, a lot of the businesses in downtown Seattle, they have gone to just that. All right, let's post up 3 or 4 or 5 armed security guards. Let's have them have guns. And yeah, we'll see if we can stop the outflow of the 5-finger discount from our stores. But then you've got a situation where you're looking like a third world country with armed guards walking around. But you know what? That's probably what needs to happen. It's just that I would probably rather not shop in an environment where some confrontation between an armed guard and some other crazy nut job whacked out on fentanyl comes in and just, got a gun, got a sword, got a bayonet, whatever their thing is. And I'd probably rather not, spend my money in those environments. And I think a lot of you are in the same exact boat. You're like, hell no, I wouldn't live in the city. Yeah, right? But this woman, she's got a vested interest. She's got a business and she's like, all right, we're just going to get some guards down here. We're going to get some guards up in this biatch. Landers hopes that guards could prevent more vandalism. All right. But, again, you're not going after the root causes, are you? Vandalism. Oh, vandalism and graffiti drives me crazy. It's just such a bad look. If you go up and down Woodstock, you'll see the broken glass. It's very disturbing, said Landers. Yeah, that is one of those things. It's that broken window theory, isn't it? That Giuliani came up with it, or didn't come up with, but he addressed. And he's like, all right, we need to fix all this crap. We need to clean this up. And he did. And now he just always seems to be on the wrong end of whatever he's doing. In Woodstock, there are broken and boarded up windows along the street. Employees told Coin 6 that they were broken by people on drugs or having a psychotic break. That psychotic break. People are, yeah, they're unhinged, right? And yet we just let them walk around. How many podcasts have I done? I did one last week where you got a guy. I think I did it on Sunday. It'll be coming out. It hasn't been released yet, but it will be. A woman knew a man broke into her house, and the man broke into her house. This is in Seattle, in the Madrona neighborhood, which is a decent neighborhood just east of downtown Seattle. Broke into her home, and they couldn't find him. They're going throughout the house. They couldn't find him. He was in the bathtub. He was taking a bath with all his clothes on. And the statement was, he seems to be okay, but he's very wet. He was taking a bath with all of his clothes on. Okay, so you broke into a house and you took a bath with all of your clothes on. Okay. It's mental. The guy's mental. That's literally what residents of these areas are experiencing. And yet they are probably the same people who voted for policies, which we've ended up with this, perfect, sales funnel of why wouldn't these people come here? Sonia Miller with the Woodstock Neighborhood Association said she and her neighbors also see criminal activity on the streets. It was trash. It was just out of control, said Miller. We have campers and drug dealing in distance of preschools. That's not uncommon. I mean, we just had an opioid clinic open up yesterday here in Linwood. I talked about that a little bit. And it's basically right next to a Boys and Girls Club. A little bit of, people have to deal with their dependency somewhere. There's time and place for those types of, centers. Just maybe not next to the Boys and Girls Club. I'm just saying, concerned parents. Yeah. Because wherever you've got those clinics, where you've got the methadone clinic, whatever, you've also got the drug dealers lurking nearby because they know they've got a built-in market and to tempt these folks. Not good. She said, as soon as one more camp is cleared, another pops up. She wants to see the city handle the problem in a more streamlined way, but also think the issue runs deeper. It ultimately is about having housing. It's a balance between compassion and frustration because of bad actors like the drug dealers, Miller said. All right, so let's just take a super quick look at that statement because we've got a bunch of elements in there. It's ultimately about having housing. Okay. No, disagree, 100% disagree, unless treatment is housing, is considered. All right, I'm down with that. Compassion and frustration, yes. Compassion and frustration. But that's when we identify that, we've basically admitted, we did have compassion, but now we're just frustrated. Now, compassion got you to the point where you voted in the folks and the policies that you've got. So you just got to kind of deal with that. You're going to have to work your way out. And unfortunately, working your way out is going to be a whole lot harder than working your way in. Decriminalizing everything, making everything, it's okay. One of the stories I was watching yesterday was how many young people there are getting involved in this lifestyle where they're getting arrested. And part of the deal is if it's not illegal for them to have drugs, if there's no, criminal retribution towards them, if they can't get arrested and thrown in juvie for small possession of cocaine or whatever, and their parents don't have any control, maybe the parents are having a tough time themselves, you've just got this entire generation of kids growing up without any rules, without any guidelines, doing whatever the F they want. And because they're juveniles, they get preyed upon by, the older kids. And you've just got this cycle going on. So, why wouldn't this happen is kind of the question. And so what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to repeal some of those possession laws. Yeah, well, I'm not really sure about that. That's going to be hard. But that's, some of what we're talking about here in Washington State. We have laws where cops basically can't chase after anybody for anything. We're starting to talk about that already. It's like, that one law we did where it basically just handcuffs the police ability to do their job. Maybe we need to take a look at that. We need to rethink and reimagine that. Got stuff like that going on, but it's going to be a long time. And that's if it ever gets put into place, right? Big if. But in the meantime, expect much more of these shenanigans. There's no ETA on when the business owners would actually get that security. The third thing that I missed out on, sorry, I'm jumping back to this one sentence. So we got the housing, we got the balance between compassion and frustration, and we got bad actors like the drug dealers. Okay, the drug dealers are only supplying what is already a massive demand there. And that's the folks living in the homeless encampments on drugs. You got a massive built-in demand there. So you can't just blame the drug dealers. They are serving a need in the community. Demand and supply. And there's big demand for it. So the dealers are going to jump in. And in defending their turf, you're going to see some shootings. And that's what you got going on. And then everybody else wants to point out, wow, those are hard things in society to kind of work our way around. Let's just talk about housing. Yeah, we just need more housing. I mean, that's literally what I see happening. It's, planes, trains, and automobiles, where John Candy and Steve Martin, they end up in a hotel room together, don't have a lot of money. Credit card's been denied and everything. And yeah, it's super cold, whatever. And they're in bed together, but it's not like that, right? It's literally two middle-aged dudes in bed. And Steve Martin says, or John Candy says, my hand, where's your hand? Steve Martin says, where's your hand to John Candy? And John Candy says, between two pillows. And Steve Martin said, those aren't pillows. And they get up, they shake it off because, they'd been spooning or whatever accidentally while they're asleep. They get up, shake it off. How about those bears? Just how about those bears? That's what I feel like our communities are doing. How about those bears? Maybe we do t-shirts with that. How about those bears with housing first and a big line through it? Because it's just, let's divert our attention to something else. Look at the mountains over there. Look at the mountains over there. Aren't they pretty? When you've got just this pile of trash in front of you. And you're like, yeah, they are. But, this isn't good. Not good. How about, I think it was Bears. Wasn't it the Bears, Chicago Bears? That was in Chicago, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so. All right. So there's no ETA when the business owners would actually get that security, but they discussed it at a recent meeting. Is there anything more on this bad boy? No, that's it. All right. So much of the same. You've got entire communities that are going to band together and they're going to go, all right, this is what we're doing. You got communities down in San Francisco, Castro district saying, we don't want to pay our taxes because we ain't getting nothing for our taxes. Yeah, we're not getting the security. Shops are getting broken into. Crap all over the streets. We saw what happened with that one poor guy who was just trying to wash off the sidewalk. Got arrested for battery. If you didn't see that one, you can check that podcast out. I got demonetized on that one. I did. Yeah, I'm getting demonetized. I'm getting censored on all the drug stuff. Sorry, excuse me. Nobody wants to talk about drugs. So that's going on. There's that. So I am literally having to self-censor because otherwise there's just no point to putting it up. It's just not going to go anywhere. And so all of that content is over on Rumble. So all the stuff that I'm having to self-censor, got a button here. Yeah. So it's over here on member content. It's on reasonabletv.com. So if you want to, best thing to do to help me out is hit that like button, but share the videos as they come out. If you want to go dive deep, we've got all kinds of content on our private site here. We can view all. We've literally got, I had somebody, you know who you are. You watched 13 episodes this past Saturday, I think it was, something like that. But you can binge watch some of this stuff. Well, this is where a lot of the stuff that, isn't going to make it through on mainstream media. This is where all of that is going. And so we're doing $10 a month there because it costs a lot of money for all this crazy stuff. And we've got people, thank you to everybody who's joined because it's starting to gain some traction, and that along with our Discord channel, we're trying to make this a community where people can come. And that's why I'm doing more live streams with you guys, because that's how we can kind of interact. And speaking of that, I'm going to interact right now. I'm going to see what you guys are talking about here, see what we got going on. Legalizing without cracking down on related crime doesn't work. Yep. And that's why we're seeing so much of this just, nutty stuff going on, right? Property owners have too big of a hassle throwing out bad tenants and won't take risks. Okay. Problem with that is you get somebody addicting, and they use the gets out of control, and they no longer can support their own use. That's when it becomes a problem. All right. So yes, that's the situation where people are just stealing willy-nilly. They're stealing willy-nilly it's the ecosystem, right? And that's why you've got so much of this going on. People are like, why are there so many small-time petty thefts? Well, you're going to get away with it. Don't have enough cops to basically cover all of this criminal activity going on. And then even if they do catch the guys, we're not prosecuting them. And even if we do prosecuting them, we're not putting them in jail for long enough because we've decriminalized so much of this activity. I actually read an article the other day that somebody was saying, you're missing out on all of the people who weren't arrested for drug possession. And I was like, all right, okay. But is that a good thing? It's ruining people's lives to be arrested for drug possession. Well, yeah, but when things were illegal, we had a lot less of this. And that's where I feel like we're literally, how about those bears? Let's look at housing, because we've got so many things that we know what the answers are to. It's just that they're not answers that we're not willing to deal with the fact that John Candy had his hand on Steve Martin's ass. That's where we sit. It's sad, right? Like, we don't want to deal with that. We want to talk about compassion. The compassion that I see going on out there in Seattle. If you want to call that compassion, you go for it. But that's not me. Putting them in jail for a long time does nothing if they're in there for drugs. Well, it does take them off the streets. That's my argument for that one. Now, it might not get him sober, or who knows? And we know that prison doesn't always work because when they come back out, but you've got to have some retribution for people, the criminals that are out there just running around willy-nilly, because that's not working either. So my argument would be, okay, it doesn't work, but it works better than the alternative, which is what we've got now. All right. And so somebody's planning on running for Seattle City Council District 2. Let's talk about that for 1 second. Good for you. I think that's great. I think we've got 7 out of the 9. It's a whole bunch of positions have opened up in the city council because nobody wants to be a Seattle City Council member. Shocking, right? I know, shocking. Somebody had like 7 instances of poop put on their yard. Not dog poop. Yeah, the good stuff. Yeah, human poop. I think was that Mosqueda? I can't remember who it was. But you got a situation where, the inmates running the asylum, the residents of Seattle are pissed off. But they've also got to take a look at themselves and go, we voted this stuff in. So unless we're willing to do something, expect much of the same. You might say, well, Sean, if all this stuff clears up, what are you going to podcast on? Good point. I got podcasts for years, right? Because it's going to take a long time to unwind from where we're at. People do drugs. People do drugs because life is miserable or they're in pain and they have no relief. Absolutely true. 100%. And that's what you see a lot of on soft white underbelly. Unfortunately, then they get in that cycle and they just can't get out of it. And yeah, I don't know what the great answer is there, but I think you've got to have some kind of involuntarily admission to wherever. You read so many stories about folks who are like, yeah, that one cop that, came back after me the 6th, 7th, and 8th time, and I finally got sober on my 8th trip to King County. If it wasn't for that one cop who just kept hassling me, I wouldn't be alive today. How many of those stories do you hear? Then how many stories do you hear? I podcast on them. Some kid came from, where was he from? Forget where he was from, but he was going to Alaska to get away from his demons that were chasing him across the country. Came to Seattle for 3 days, died of an overdose. His mom talked about that. That's somebody's kid that's not here because Seattle is such an environment where they know they can just come here do their thing. Lots of drugs, lots of available drugs, and just, hey, if you do OD, chances are you're going to have somebody help you out. But there's that certain percentage where people don't get the help they need and they die. They're dead. I said cut off the drug flow and the epidemic would reduce greatly. Okay, well, we're talking about supply there, aren't we? We're talking about they have a weak mind. It's like a coping mechanism. It is. But if you make it too readily available and they're able to go down that road of getting drugs, I think that's where, if it were harder, if availability were harder, but we're not going that way. We're going the other way. We already lock too many people up. I think business owners would say we don't lock enough people up. If you look at how many people we do lock up, we lock up a ton. But there's also the flip side to that is there's a lot of people doing criminal activity out there who aren't paying attention to others, who aren't respectful of society. What do we do with those people? And the only thing you've got right now is basically incarceration. Because so many of these stories that you see and hear are of people who are let out on whatever, and they go out and they reoffend, and it's something harsh. And then, district attorneys got, egg on their face, and they're like, oh, yeah, that wasn't our intent. So, okay, let's jump back. Here's the next one. Are you okay with a drone delivering your goods purchased from, say, a Walmart, dropping them off on your front porch? Are you okay with that? George Jetson style, right? That drone comes down, bloop, right on your front porch, takes off. Bloop. I don't know if you've been around a drone. We've got, I don't know, I've got my own drone, and we've got 3, I think, here for Summit Properties Northwest. So you can get those, really cool aerial views of homes and their communities. You kind of do that reveal shot where, you're just looking at woods and you get over the top of the trees and you're looking at mountains and you're looking at the ocean, whatever that is. So we use drones for that a lot, but they're loud. And, the neighbors are always kind of, what are they doing over there? Well, would you want to have those zipping around in your neighborhood, dropping stuff off? They've got cameras. They all do. I mean, it's just what drones, that's the whole point to having a drone. But you're told by the delivery service, we don't use cameras on our drones. We just drop stuff off. And would you be okay with that? Is that something you'd be interested in? I'm kind of like, well, I've got an Amazon delivery person in my neighborhood that drives super fast and plays some really loud hip hop. And I'm kind of like, yeah, drone wouldn't be that bad in comparison. But do we want just a bunch of drones flying around? I probably don't. But, if you watch the Jetsons, there's all kinds of people flying around in the air, right? Here's George Jetson. Is that how that went? Walmart slammed for delivery service that critics say violates privacy. Do we have any privacy anymore? I don't know. Probably not. Probably got none. And we're just, kidding ourselves with, all right, I'm going to hide my IP address by going here, here, and here. Walmart may be a company beloved by shoppers for its convenience and low prices, but it's not entirely immune to coming under fire for missteps. Some have cited the store charging certain customers more than they should. Oh, that's not good. Walmart charging people more? Shocking. Others take issue with the retailer's well-intentioned single-use bag policy. And some have, we have to pay for our bags here. It drives me crazy. 8 cents a pop. And 95% of all plastic goes in the dump. It goes in the garbage, doesn't get recycled. Only 5% does. What are we even doing? And some have called out the company for its sudden shift towards anti-theft tactics that ruin the shopping experience. I think all stores are guilty of that right now because everything's under lockdown. Everything's under lockdown. And now, in the latest instance, Walmart is getting slammed for its new delivery service that critics claim violates their policy. So let's skip down here. There's some nonsense. Walmart has long strived to provide its customers with more accessible ways to shop. Got a bunch of nonsense there, but now they're fulfilling orders by launching a drone delivery service for select customers. After testing it in 2020 to deliver COVID-19 testing kits in select markets, Walmart has since expanded the offering to select stores in multiple cities across 7 states, including Arkansas, Texas, Florida, Arizona, Virginia, North Carolina, and Utah. That is kind of a hodgepodge, right? But you might say a little bit more conservative there. They're going to be okay with this? Don't know. Customers that live within a mile of stores that are part of the company's partnership with Drone Up can place an order any day from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. to be delivered in as soon as 30 minutes for a fee of $3.99. So you get a rush order on your delivery and boop, 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 down it comes. And you've got your whatever it is. I wonder what the weight limit is on the drone. I know you've got drones. I mean, you got drones that deliver bombs, right? Drone delivery makes it possible for our customers to shop those last minute or forgotten items with ease in a package that's frankly really cool. Walmart U.S. Vice President, some Vic from said that in a statement. It may seem like a futuristic option, but it's giving our customers what they've always wanted. And that's time back to focus on what is most important to them. All right, but if you can get that same good delivered by an Amazon delivery that, isn't something flying in the air, I'd say, okay. Every now and then, are you going to go down the road? I need this really super quick. Maybe that is an option. All right, I'll queue up the $3.99 option. Fly it to me. I might do it just to see what happens. It's not in, obviously it's not in Washington State. What about the whole commercial air flight? You got stuff flying in and out. I don't know if you've flown a drone. If you've flown a drone, let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the live chat if you're on there. I'd love to know. If you're in the comments, you're watching this video after this live stream, let me know in the comments. Have you flown a drone? What do you think? I think they're fun to fly. I'm not very good, but I've got a DJI something Pro small. I don't know. It's very small. Super fun to fly. But, flying stuff in the air, it's out there. And, oftentimes you'll try and launch your drone and you'll be in an area where it's a no-fly zone because you got planes flying and you put your drone into somebody's jet engine. Yeah, that's not going to work out well. So you've got all this, you've got all these frequencies and you're supposed to have a commercial license if you're doing it for commercial purposes. And that test is actually pretty hard. I've paid for and had a couple of my video guys go through that process, getting their license to, be a professional drone pilot. And it's not an easy deal. So there's a lot of regulations because, again, you're flying something in the air. So, yeah. How's this going to go down the road? All right, here we've got a photo of what this looks like. That's a good sized drone. That's a big ass drone relative to small consumer drones that you see out there, right? So some local residents say the new Walmart delivery services raises concerns over privacy. But despite the moves, the novel service's convenience, some are already unhappy with the retailer because of it. In Glendale, Arizona, residents who live near a Walmart that hosts a Drone Up hub complain that the drones are creating a nuisance and raising privacy concerns. It sounds like a hornet's nest that's been kicked up, Mike Baxter, a Glendale resident, told local CBS affiliate. I am not against drones, but do it somewhere else. So we got a not in my backyard. Don't do it here. Fly your drone elsewhere. Super interesting. If you go out to fly a drone and you have anybody that's been in the armed services, in the military, their immediate reaction when you launch that drone is to blast it out of the sky. I'd prefer you didn't blast mine out of the sky, but I get it. Drones in combat are something that you shoot because that's what you do, right? I mean, it's just what you do. So interesting. I've had that experience more than once with, maybe we're out there and you've got the homeowner and, they do this number, all right, where they're going to shoot it out of the sky. And I'm like, nah, I'd prefer you didn't because this is going to be some really cool footage. But their instinct is to, shoot it, bring it down because we don't want that thing flying. It's an invasion of privacy. Don't have it take pictures of my house when literally we are there to take pictures of their house and video. But, I think a lot of people think, wow, the drone's going to fly really close to my bedroom window and they're going to see something at night. I mean, this is invasion of privacy. People want their privacy, right? And they should have that. But we're in an age where privacy Yeah, you got some slim pickings, right? It's not a necessary service here. This is the guy with the not in my backyard, who's not against drones, but just not in his backyard, who added that the machines disturb his neighborhood's tranquility and violate his property. Again, I go back to the really loud Amazon truck that is left running with the hip hop while the individual runs the package up to the front door, and then they jettison off, literally just lurch out of there. That's somewhat alarming too. I'd have to say that the drone is quieter than that. But if you're not used to it, that swarming bees sound, zzz, you can always hear a drone when it's out there. And if you haven't really experienced one, they're loud. They're loud because those quad props, whatever they are, those things fly. Those things go. And some of these drones, they're super fast. They're great little machines. One resident said she was essentially told that she had no legal rights when she brought up her concerns. In some of these communities, that's probably true. So far, some locals have become so fed up that they've taken their complaints to the store. But when Glendale resident Autumn Johnston voiced her concerns, they said they were dismissed. The gentleman from Drone Up Delivery basically told me I had essentially no legal rights, Johnson told local NBC affiliate, adding that the machines can also record videos or take photos of her property. So they've got that capability. Now, you're just relying upon the drone service to not take pictures of your home. I think this is the way things are going to go down the road. I really do. I just do. I think this is the way things are going, whether it's a drone, whether it's some kind of other deal. But we're not going to have cars delivering our goods and services forever. It's going to be some technology along these lines, right? I need to get some water. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not looking to get stuff delivered to my house via a drone, but if I had the option and if I really needed it, would I pay $3.99 for it? Probably. But that's because of my poor planning, right? If I can't figure out that I need something that quickly, and if I can't make it to a store a mile away, that's my poor planning. So should I inundate my neighborhood with that buzzing sound? It's already enough going on, right? You already got enough machinery and craziness going on. And I think the Amazon trucks, it's taken people a long time to get used to those. It has. It's just, and you'll hear people talk about that. And I'll look out the window fairly often if I'm at home on the weekend and I'm like, what is that? No, oh, Amazon. Yeah, it's out there. Oh, it's another delivery. Oh, it's UPS. People get so much stuff delivered to their home, especially people that just, I don't know, they seem to just hunker down and never want to go to the store. I like going to the store. I'm still a store goer. I do. I want to see other stuff that's there that, maybe I'm not looking at on my, app, my Amazon app. But man, now you get sucked into that, right? All right, I just hit this button and I hit this other button and it shows up on my doorstep like 4 or 5 hours later if it's something that's in stock. That is hard. It's like, I don't want to go to the store. It's a mile down the road. My lazy ass can't get there. Let's have a drone deliver it. I don't think we're that far away from it. But how do they regulate on? I'm no air traffic controller, but how are they going to regulate? I know these drones have technology where they're supposed to not run into trees and not run into stuff. But I'll tell you, I've lost one drone that way. It was a $1,500 drone. It got flown into a tree and couldn't get it off the tree. And it probably ended up dropping down, 150 feet, big tree up at Deception Pass in Whidbey Island. Getting, videographers getting some epic footage. It's probably in the ocean now. It's probably halfway out to wherever in the ocean. But yeah, drones. Is this going to be the way of the future? I don't know. Would I pay for it? Yeah, probably. But that's because I'm lazy and I don't really care about the environment. Batteries for drones, they're just like electric cars. I am babbling at this point. Let's see what you guys say. I don't mind going to the store when it's not minus 10 degrees. I should move. Okay. All right. They don't need to be controlled. They're autonomous. The whole idea of open borders. You guys are talking about a lot of stuff. I will never use a drone unless it's to use as a weapon against others. All right. Well, there's one attitude right there. There's one attitude. But for those of us in real estate, it's given us the ability to get some footage that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Or there are instances where if you need to see what your views would look like from a second floor addition, those types of things, fly a drone up there. You can get a look around, take a look and see. So there's lots of instances there where they have, I think, really good uses that aren't invading. They're not looking in somebody's bedroom window. Hey now, what's in there? I don't get stuff delivered unless the places I go to say it's online only or they don't have it. I'd rather not go to the store and be around people since so many weak-minded types with gun, also COVID. Yeah, I mean, people have various reasons they don't want to go to the store, right? And it's so easy to just sit on your computer and go, boop, or on your cell phone. That's the one that kills me. I'm just watching TV, or sitting here at my desk doing this. Chat GPT will control the drones. Yeah, maybe. It's that artificial intelligence thing, right? Is that where we're headed? Could well be, right? VA suck. Okay. Yeah. Talking about veteran. Can any be hacked? I'm sure they can. I mean, it's technology, right? I keep hearing on the Chat GPT how good those things are. Somebody said, I think it was Chris D'Elia, a comedian, was talking about, hey, write me a joke. And it was actually a pretty funny, accurate joke that sounded like it came from him. So, you've got this ability to have artificial intelligence just basically do stuff for you. And like the person here is talking about, is how good the damn thing is at writing C++ code. I mean, you got artificial stuff doing crazy stuff out there now that we didn't have a while ago. And it is scary. It's so scary. I've heard of guys having drones carry engagement rings and they drop down right before the man proposes. Okay, that's cool. I could see that. Totally unnecessary, yes. Unique, yes. I'm not sure what the girls say. All of a sudden, people are, I guess there's no audience, right? I'm thinking of wedding, but on the proposal, that'd be pretty cool. I'd be okay with that. But the logistics on that, it's one thing to have the drone come down. What if the drone doesn't bring the ring down? Is the guy down on his knee for like half an hour? Where's that effing drone? Because, sometimes drones don't do what you want them to do. You have them out there a long ways. You hit that home return button. Yeah. All right. You can't see them. They get so far out, especially if you're shooting, low light situation or something. You can't see them. When you've got cloud cover that is exactly the same as your drone, you can't see the damn thing. I saw that with Chris D'Elia. Yeah. Favorite comedian. His podcast is the funniest. I agree. He's funny. He's wildly funny. He got hit with that Me Too, didn't he? He got taken down for a while and he got put back up. So for about $50 in a 3D printer, you can build an autonomous drone. For another $50, it can record fairly high quality video. Go to coordinates, hover, and take video, return home. Technology, right? Technology. You've got technology just doing crazy stuff. And I think the older we get, the more we look at that and go, not for me, not in my backyard, don't want that. But I think the younger generations are looking at ways to implement that to make things happen, whether for good or for bad. And if you're typing up code and you're like, what can I have this do for me? Pretty scary what's going on, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that this artificial intelligence can do. And then you got to ask yourself, am I going to run into McDonald's pretty soon and there's going to be nobody working there? They've got that. One state, what was it? Was it California going to $22 an hour for minimum wage at fast food restaurants, something like that? And the restaurants were going, I think we probably just won't, be doing business here. They will. Then, they'll figure out a way to make it work. But how long until all those processes that are automated get run by robots? You literally go into your McDonald's. Everything will work except the ice cream machine, right? Yeah, that's another just massive failure, isn't it? All right, let's move on to Boeing. Boeing and the 747. Why am I doing this one? We're not talking about drugs. We're not talking about homelessness. We're not talking about people whacking each other with swords. Boeing 747 jet. Boeing is an enormous influence here in the Pacific Northwest. Thomas Brothers map. We used to use them before we had our phone and GPSs. In order to get around, in order to find people's homes, you had to have a Thomas Brothers map. So I spent, 25 years on a Thomas Brothers map. I would always have a handful of them in my car. The ones with the ripped out pages were, at the bottom of the stack. The ones with the least ripped out pages, map pages 560 and 523 were the ones where I was always appraising the most, whatever it was. But on the Thomas Brothers map page in Everett, there is a big building, and it was so big that they called it the world's largest building because it was. And that's where they built the 747. And the last 747 is going out there today. And I know we've got a bunch of Boeing engineers that watch this show religiously. So that's why I wanted to do this one. Also, when I was a kid, the 747 jumbo jet had just been rolled out. It got rolled out in 1969. So I remember being very little, making a trip over to Australia. My dad sold some development or something, and because it was really expensive to send the whole family on a, round trip trip to Australia. Back then, it was just expensive. Air travel wasn't, what it is today. You didn't have all these nonstop flights. So we'd fly into, Honolulu, and then we'd fly into Fiji, where I drank the water when I was a baby and I got wildly sick. And it wasn't good. Don't drink the water. If you don't know what you're doing, don't drink the water. I was little, so I didn't have that option. But on one of our trips, my brother and I, we got brought into the cockpit of the jumbo 747 jet. This is when it'd been out there a handful of years, but it was still kind of a novel deal. And we'd fly in Qantas, and they'd give you those airline pilot things that you'd wear. They give you a bunch of stuff. They give you a bunch of candy, a bag with candy, hard candy, because they knew that screaming children on ascent and descent on a 17-hour plane flight, that's not good for the morale of, the people on the plane. So they'd load you up with candy, and you just did that trick. You got a grab bag of stuff if you were a kid and you were flying international like that back in the day, especially to Australia. I don't know. That's the only place I really flew that I remember. But we get on the 747 jet and we get into the cockpit. It's just massive. And we do that drill. And then the pilot says, hey, I'm going to have you take a little tour with the flight steward. I don't even know what you call him now. As long as I don't, dead name somebody or misgender somebody, I figure I'm good. Flight attendant? Do we go with that? And she took us upstairs to the cocktail lounge upstairs. And I thought that was so cool. I'm like, we're on a double-decker plane. They've got a bar up here. I think it was kind of like a restaurant bar. You could go up there if you were an adult, but we were kids, so we weren't doing that kind of thing. But, to get on a jumbo jet that, flew you that far was just, at the time I was little and thought this is normal, but my parents explained to me that this is pretty new technology. We didn't used to be able to do this. My mom came on a steamship over here from Australia in, I think, 68. It took weeks and weeks and weeks. Now we just fly, boom. But before the 747, that changed everything. It was a game changer. So that's why we're talking about it now on this ridiculous podcast. Boeing delivers their final 747 jumbo jet to Atlas Air, and that's happening today, right now. Atlas Air ordered 4 747-8 Freightliners early last year, and the final jet leaves the factory Tuesday, today. So, this is pretty cool. This is history in the making. We don't have as much demand for this kind of plane, but the 737, you bet. And, a lot's changed. Back when they were making these planes, we didn't have Microsoft. We didn't have Amazon. We didn't have all this other crazy stuff coming out of Seattle. That came in the 80s, right? Came in the 80s and got going in the 90s, and it's here to stay because we're probably, stuck with computers. Boeing is delivering its final 747 jumbo jet on Tuesday after a ceremony at the company's factory in Washington State. The jet is served as a cargo plane, a commercial aircraft capable of carrying nearly 500 passengers. If you think about that, that's a lot of people just up in the air, right? That's a lot of folks. I remember walking on those jets thinking, this is so big. And when you're little and you can't see over the seats and you walk into the back of the plane and you're just hoping, God, I hope we are nowhere near the smoking section. Invariably, you would be one effing seat in front, one row in front of the smoking section. And then you just, smoke it up and you'd get off the plane and until you got to wherever you're going, my grandma's house in Australia in Sydney, you'd smell like a secondhand cigarette, right? I mean, just like, who smoked? We flew. Oh, yeah. Remember when that was a thing? Smoking in a plane? Crazy stuff. Some of you younger kids can't imagine that. It was pretty harsh. Guys would just chain smoke. And then when that first went into effect, when was that? The 90s? I think that went into effect in the 90s. People were still smoking it up in the bathrooms and had all that kind of stuff. It took time, people a long time. See, cargo plane, commercial aircraft capable of carrying 500 people, transport for NASA's space shuttles, and the Air Force One presidential aircraft since it first took flight in '69. It revolutionized travel by connecting international cities that never had direct routes, while also helping to democratize passenger flight. Before that, flight was basically for the rich. All of a sudden, you can get a whole bunch of people on a plane, and that started to take off. People started flying more and made, travel just that much more available. And for my family, with half of my family in Australia, that was a big deal for us growing up, is we'd be able to fly, go see my family, go see my cousins, go see my grandma, go see my uncles. Half my family's still down under, good friends down under, just where they are. In the past 15 years, however, Boeing and its European rival Airbus have introduced more profitable and fuel-efficient wide-body jets, planes that have just 2 engines compared to the 747's 4. The final plane is the 1,574th built by Boeing in the Puget Sound region of Washington State. 1,574. That's a lot of planes. One of the things that I've been looking at lately is you got all these jack-off politicians and Hollywood stars and NBA players, and they're all so concerned about the environment. And then you've got all this exposure on, them walking up the ramp to their private jet, which just pumps however many tons of carbon into the environment. So they're like, nah, you need to recycle your plastics, but I'm going to ride my private jet. That kind of thing. Are we really going to get away from that? Are we going to really get away from all this pollution? Yeah, we're probably going to make it a little bit better. But all this virtue signaling, that's just annoying, isn't it? It's like, you're talking this nonsense. And we know because we see pictures of you getting on your private jet. And they're talking about, the WNBA due to security reasons. The ladies of the WNBA needing to fly, private because of security. And you're like, okay, all right. Do they have that in their budget? No, because the NBA is basically sponsoring that league, right? They're subsidizing that league. They don't have the income to do that. But due to security, all right, whatever. A crowd of current and former Boeing workers is expected to be in attendance for the final send-off, and the last jet is being delivered to cargo air carrier Atlas Air. Big deal. It's kind of an end of an era because, you're going to build different planes, but there are so many people here in Washington State where Boeing used to be. Massive, biggest building in the world. Said so on my Thomas Brothers map. Thomas Brothers map wouldn't lie to me. They wouldn't. They just wouldn't. Yeah, and it's enormous. And when you drive by that building, you're like, that is a big building. I don't know how big that building is, but that's a big building. What I know is that my tape measure would not wrap around that building. It's just enormous. It's an enormous structure because, they're building 747s in it and they open up the doors and, back them out or pull them out, whatever they do. If you love this business, you've been dreading this moment. Aviation analyst Richard Absolute whatever said, nobody wants a 4-engine airliner anymore. But that doesn't erase the tremendous contribution the aircraft made to the development of the industry or its remarkable legacy. And you will literally have conversations here with older folks, people like my age. I'm joking. Maybe 10 years older. A lot of engineers, a lot of people I've got friends that have spouses that are riveters that are literally putting the planes together. So you got a lot of that still going on here. And this is kind of an end of the era. It's a sad end of the era, but, technology, upwards and onwards, I think we say. Boeing decided to build the 747 after losing a contract for a huge military transport, the C-5A. It was designed to take advantage of the new engines developed for the transport and use them for civilian aircraft. These high bypass turbofan engines burned less fuel by passing air around the engine core, which enabled a longer flight range. So just more, and here's another last thing I'm going to read on this. More than 50,000 Boeing workers built the first 747 in less than 16 months, earning them the nickname The Incredibles. That's pretty cool. The jet's production required the construction of a massive factory in Everett, which is located north of Seattle. That's the building I'm talking about. That's the building on my Thomas Brothers map. 50,000 people built the first 747 in less than 16 months. I mean, that's insane, right? That's insane. Especially back then, when we weren't doing quite as much of this. It wasn't just, another aircraft, massive aircraft. We had just flown, well, whether we believe it or not, we had just visited the moon, right? Because that was right after 69, right after I was born. I was born November of 68. So I can still claim to be a child of the 60s, but I'm literally a baby of the 60s. I was a year and change when 1970 rolled around. Okay, that is that. I'm going to look and see what you guys are talking about. We're going to talk about the Polly P video. We're going to watch the Polly P video. We're also going to listen to the Polly P 911 call, because both of these are just weird. There's way more questions than answers, right? That's what I kind of came away from it. Tons of space right smack dab here in North Dakota. I had somebody on a podcast the other day saying, hey, if you can get through the weather in North Dakota, it's a great place to come to. South Dakota? Yeah. I mean, there's some good options out there. Gotta get away from that weather. Right before this podcast happened, I sent my mom a text and I said, Mom, I'm going live, 11 o'clock. Do you have your ice skates on? Because they're down in Oklahoma City. And it's my understanding that they may be experiencing some weather. And by weather, ice storm, which I hadn't really been through an ice storm until we had one here in Seattle, a while ago. And I talked about that. Yeah, that was scary. That you just stay home. But I know down, I think Texas is getting hit, Oklahoma, into Tennessee. The ice storm hit last night, hitting today, going to get worse. It always does. So I sent my mom, you got your ice skates on? And so if you can get through the weather in some of these areas, then, you can do a lot of cool stuff. My wife and I saw the first test flight of the 747 out over Puget Sound. I can still see that lumbering craft going south on the south. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Those are the memories. Those are the kinds of things that you have here in Seattle that you don't have in other communities. And you might say, wow, because of your policies, Boeing bailed on you. Well, yeah, but we still had them back then. We had that whole, when Boeing gave up, that was one of the stats I didn't read. We went from like 116,000 people employed here in Boeing down to like 38,000 within a short period of time. That was the last one out of the city of Seattle, turn off the lights by real estate brokers, 2 real estate brokers. Put that on a billboard on Highway 99. That's, it's famous stuff for back in the day. But that's some of the lore that we've got because of an employer like Boeing. And that's why it's so special. And that's why the 747 is kind of a big deal. It's minus 27 most places in winter. That's called having weather. Yeah, we do not have weather here. We do not have weather here. And that's why I think so many people come here to live in these tents, because you can make it in a tent. You can make it in a 3-season tent. It's because our winters are so mild here. I mean, if we hit 25 degrees here, people freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, got to hunker down. Did you go to the grocery store and get groceries? Literally, if there is a weather indication that there might be a snowflake here in Seattle, everybody runs to the grocery store. Amazon gets, orders backed up for days. We need our groceries. We might have a quarter inch of snow. Yeah, Texas is not minus 20 in winter. No, but with that wind chill in Texas, it might as well be minus 20. That wind chill, I've spent a lot of time in North Dallas. Oh, it's so cold. So cold. I've heard that the equivalent of all land west of the Mississippi belongs to the federal government. That could be. That might be. You know how cheap insulation is? It's another comment. Yes, it is. It is. But, one of those things. All right. Let's jump on over to the I'm going to grab some water here, and then we're going to watch the Polly P video. It's so entertaining. Now, this came out on Friday, and I was dying sick, so I watched about 5 hours of that. I was just like, all right, just scouring the internet. I was just passed out on my couch watching this. And you know what? I just have more questions than I have answers. More questions than answers. That's kind of what I came up with. It's like, what? What's okay? All right. Well, all right. Maybe so much of this just doesn't add up, right? Graphic video of attack on Paul Pelosi is released. It was kind of graphic, but it also, now let's watch it. Let's watch it. I got to put my earphones on. And I am hoping that this audio works because we've been working hard on getting the audio lined up. Okay. Somebody said their work building is closed today and tomorrow because it's cold outside to us. It's all relative, right? It's all relative. If you're in Hawaii, it's 50 degrees. Those people hunker the F down. True story. Like, oh, geez, I need to put on my parka for the rest of us. All right, excuse me. Here we go. What's in the backpack? What's in the backpack? That's a big, heavy backpack. You see the way he shifted that? That's a 50-pound pack. That's a 60-pound pack for sure. What's in there? Looks like a sleeping pad. Is he homeless? Has anybody else mentioned this, commented on this? I haven't seen much. Everybody's always concerned about the drink in his hand, right? Bashes that window in. That's that window.
2620, right?
Here's the police call.
Yeah, it literally said in there. Hi, guys. How you doing? Oh, yeah. What's going on, man?
What is going on here? What is happening here? I mean, let's back up just a scooch here. Let's back up to like right here.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
He had a big smile on his face. Both of them were kind of sitting there going, oh, the cops showed up. What? Hey now. What is, who opened the door? Is that an automatic door opener or is there somebody else in there? Did one of them open up the door? It certainly wasn't Pauly P because he's got his hand on the hammer. I mean, literally a hammer. I know what you're thinking. He's got his hand on a hammer. He's got his drink in his hand. Toes in the sand.
What's going on, man?
Everything's good.
Are those guys smiling? Look at this. They could be going to the zoo together. I mean, I got questions. What do we do? What are we doing here? What's going on? I mean, when you watch this, you were like, what? And tape around the window. Tape around the. So are we getting ready to paint? Is that what's going on? And those, just other ridiculous questions. And why wasn't there security all over when this guy broke into the house? So many questions.
Right. Drop the hammer.
Nope.
Hey.
What is going on right now?
I'm not getting an answer on calls.
Boom!
Calls in the area that someone in
I got him, Michael.
All right, just a, mess of bodies. And So that's basically it. And then we hear some snoring at some point.
This is San Francisco Police. Do you need help?
Oh, well, there's a gentleman here just waiting for my wife to come back. Nancy Pelosi.
2:23
He's just waiting for her to come back, but she's not going to be here for a day, so I guess we'll have to wait.
Gonna wait a day?
Hey, do you need police, fire, or medical for anything?
8 seconds.
I don't think so.
So why did you call?
Is the Capitol Police around?
2:20.
No, this
They
is San
usually
Francisco.
protect my wife. They're usually here at the house protecting my wife.
No,
but
this is San
gentleman came in.
Francisco Police.
Friday, October.
I understand.
28, 2022.
Okay, well,
02:24
I don't know, what do you think?
18 seconds.
think everything's good.
He calls 911 and then asks this dude, "Hey, what do you think?" I mean, he's calling because he has an issue, or what's the deal? Did he want the Capitol Police because he knows them? Probably. Well, then why? I don't know. So many questions. He's literally asking the guy that whacks him in the head, "Hey, what do you think? Do we need help?" I mean, what?
He thinks everything's good. I've got a problem, but he thinks everything's good.
Do you know who the person is?
No, I don't know who he is. He has this. He's telling me. He's telling me not to. He's telling me not to do anything.
What is your name?
Seconds.
My name is Paul Pelosi.
Friday.
Anyway, this gentleman says that he thinks everything ought to. He's telling me to put the phone down and just do what he says.
18 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, what's the gentleman's name?
I don't know. What's that?
My name's David.
The name is David.
Okay, and who is David?
25,
I don't know. What's that?
I'm a friend of theirs.
Yeah, he says he's a friend, but as I say, I've never.
But you don't know who he is?
25
No, ma'am.
I've watched this multiple times, and each time
The performance was enchanting.
the pizza call. Okay, yeah, that is one. That is one. Somebody that's in distress that needs somebody, needs 911 to call. And I need 2 pepperoni pizzas and 3 Diet Cokes. And you realize this is 911. Yes, please send those over. Okay, is that what's going on here? Maybe, but there's just so many things that it's like, why did Paul Pelosi have a drink in his hand when he opened the door? Was it water? I don't know. I got to be honest, it didn't sound on that phone call like Pelosi was drunk. But, we know that, hydration is key for Paul Pelosi, right? That's a known quantity. It does a little boozing. You add that DUI, do a little boozing. Hydration, very important. But on this whole thing, that's some ridiculous ad. I'm going to get rid of this for you guys here. On this whole thing, what's going on? Who knows? I so many questions there. Or David DePop is just crazy. He's breaking into the house. There's been a few other podcasters that have said this is a drug deal. And I'm kind of like, weed's legal in California. You'd have no reason to have somebody bringing weed. Paul Pelosi's older. He's probably not going to be doing coke. He's probably not going to be doing fentanyl. He's not going to be doing speed. Not going to be doing meth. I wouldn't think. He's a boozer, right? So I kind of ixnayed the whole drug thing. Gay lover? I mean, maybe-ish. Or this is just a total nut job breaking into his house and Paul Pelosi's trying to cover for him. I just don't, so many questions, and yet why was Paul in his underwear? Okay, well, it was in the middle of the night. And, yeah, hard to say. That's a really good question. Might have made himself a drink. Then Pop breaks in and Paul's trying to keep him calm. Okay, yeah, that could very well be. All staged incidents. That, when I watched it again last night with my girlfriend, I'm like, doesn't this just feel staged? Even just the cops walking up to the front door. I don't know. He's in his own house. People walk around in their undies. It's their house. Yeah, that's true. But he knows the cops are coming, so he can do what he wants. Yep. Heard his police statements after arrest, and he has issues. Paul sounded like he was trying to give hints to dispatcher. Yep, that's kind of what I thought as well. So, what was the bottom line here? What was the deal here? I don't know. And you know what? I'm probably not going to spend too much time thinking about it. Kind of one of those things where there's some weird stuff. How about this, though? The one thing I did want to bring up is the NBC reporter who reported on basically this exact thing happening. That storyline was retracted, and he was put on leave by NBC for reporting exactly what the deal was here until they sorted it out. That reporter has now been put back in the lineup, just kind of ever so quietly. Again, how about those Bears? Nothing to see here. Just, business as usual. It's a gay thing. All right, a lot of people say it's a gay thing. Maybe it is. Maybe that was too many normal adults are taking drugs who are against criminalizing. Can't trust anything in the age of Juicy Smollett. 100% agree. That guy just did his 5th, I think, extension on his appeal. His attorneys are just appealing because he doesn't want to go do his time. Juicy needs to do some time. Yeah, if I'm doing what I want in my house, my underwear, and you confront me with a hammer, I confront you with a 12 gauge. Okay, yep, totally agreed. But remember, David DePop is 42, and he's a big dude. I don't know if you noticed that. He's a big dude because Paul Pelosi is no small dude either. But Paul Pelosi is half his age. So you got a 42-year-old that's pretty big, pretty strong, I'm totally guessing, against, one of the charges against David DePop was elder abuse because Pelosi's 83, I think. So you got one guy who's not nearly as strong. So him getting to his shotgun may not have that option, but totally agree. I don't believe the police brutality incidents either. That's a whole nother story. But, so many of these stories of people get in trouble and the police just kind of go ham could be avoided by people, not running from the police and all of that crazy. Progressive crazy. Yep, I think so. Now, the story was with David DePop was that he was a nudist, was living in a van out in front of somebody's house. They had a bunch of Black Lives Matter, and those people got so tired of him. He was a neighbor. I can't remember the story, but there was enough people that were like testifying, hey, the guy's Looney Tune. Maybe he is just Looney Tune. And he was going to break into the Pelosi's house, and he wanted to interview Nancy. And he said, well, if she told the truth, I was just going to let her off scot-free. I think that was exactly the quote. But if she didn't tell the truth, he was going to smack her on the kneecaps, going to break both her kneecaps with the hammer. And that's why he had the hammer. And then recently, he made a statement. He said, hey, guys, I'm really sorry that I wasn't able to take more of these folks out. I mean, he just sounds like he's probably just unhinged. He's gone down some storylines that may or may not be true, but he's getting in there and doing this to Paul Pelosi or whatever is going on. I'll be curious to follow this one. This one's going to have some legs to it because it's not over. There's some stuff that guaranteed comes out, to some extent. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe at his trial, or does he do a total plea? Does he plead guilty to some lower charge? Maybe insanity, who knows? I don't think he's insane. He's just got some stuff going on. Yep. Cops got caught because they wanted to get caught. Yep. Yeah, talking about some of the other. They tried to take Kyle's gun. Got a lot of other stuff going on. Talking about Memphis. Yeah, I think you guys are talking about Memphis. That whole Memphis thing. I mean, I was watching. What was it? I think I was watching Tim Pool. I know you guys hate Tim Pool, but he kind of gives that other side of things that you don't get from a lot of the other. And he also has some. He was one of the ones that said this is all about drugs, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's clearly not. He has ideas that are because he's younger and just hasn't had the same experiences as some of us that, have lived through this stuff. And at age 83, I don't think you're calling your drug dealer over to drop off an eighth, like Tim was saying, because, you can run down to your store and, pick up whatever it is that you want because weed is legal in California. So you got stuff like that, but I'm not going to spend too much more time on the whole Paul Pelosi thing, but just so many questions. And I kind of got to the point where I'm like, hey, there is one Timcast fan on here. I love Timcast too. I love watching, Chicken City. If you haven't checked out Chicken City on Timcast, on Tim Pool stuff, it's pretty fun. He's got a live stream of his chickens. Federal policing is the end game. Maybe so. All right, guys, my voice is starting to blow out. I am going to end it. I'm going to go eat some food. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I'll be back. I'm going to podcast at least a couple more times this week. This is what we're doing. This is not podcast, but live stream. Did I say, yeah, hell head thing isn't quite there yet. I feel like maybe I should have a drink in my hand and, toes in the sand, and David DePop might hit me in the head with a hammer. All right. Thanks so much for being here. I will catch up with you guys in the next one. About 11 o'clock my time is when it seems to be we are live streaming. So if you want to check in, also check out reasonabletv.com if you want to see some of our good content. And also Discord. Sign up for Discord. Become a member. It's all free. The Discord thing is whole free. Send me links, send me stuff, and then there's chat stuff on there. Discord if you guys are doing it. All right. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for attending. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now. Now I got to find the stop recording.